back to the Early Weigh-In Podcast. Here this week for UFC Kansas City. Big time fight at featherweight here. We have longtime reigning champ Max Holloway taking on Arnold in a good 5-round fight. And the co-main event should be an absolute banger. We've got Edson Barboza taking on Billy Q. It's a total of 14 fights on the books right now. Kansas City's got a nice little showing, on my opinion, Saturday. Before we get into things, make sure to do us a quick little favor. Like the video, sub to the channel as always. I hate to keep asking, but we are basically giving out free money at this point, man. 6 winning weeks in a row for not just one, but both sides of the podcast. Absolute huge. Last week, UFC 287, fantastic pay-per-view. We saw Masvidal retire in his hometown, and we saw Israel get his belt back with the second-round TKO, cashing a plus 440 prop for us. Couldn't have been any better. And again, kept that winning streak alive. A lot of good reads for you to go over last week.
Yeah, man. And, I'll always say it. Anytime that we're both in the green, I'm happy to wear this casual cap right here. We'll take a look over at your card first. Only straight bet of the night was Jorge Masvidal. Kind of a letdown as a performance, but I'm happy that he's calling it quits right now. Yeah. I think where he's ending, he's still relevant. He could probably make some money in boxing, and I'm happy to see him leave the UFC now. It was the plus 440 Adesanya by TKO prop that was huge for both of us on the night. Looked like it was going downhill, but I guess he was playing a little bit of rope-a-dope, and I loved it. It was an awesome knockout. You had Steve Garcia versus Shai Yalan, both under 2.5 rounds. And then you also had Garcia scorecards, no action. Great bet all around. That was a big cash for you on the night. You had 0.1 units on the Meerschaert by TKO round 2 and 3. It meant to be put in as submission, and at the end of the day, it didn't matter. It was they were just not gonna hit. Your parlay was for Holland to win and Bahamendez. I think both of them covered their price tag. I think that was an excellent parlay. Font by decision. I was about to say right side, wrong method, but I do think that Font was definitely the play there. Kelvin Gastelum, Chris Curtis, fight starts round 3. The way they were duking it out, the headbutt, there were some sweats in that fight for sure. But that one ended up cashing for you as well. And then the Godinez wins by TKO at plus 900. I think for the way that fight played out, that's all you could ask for. Yeah. You're taking a long shot plus 900, and it stayed on the feet the entire time when I thought that was going to be a wrestling match. You ended up the night positive 4.25 units with a 61% return on investment. Awesome night for you. Looking over at my side, my only straight bet of the night, Michelle Waterson. I also had the fight doesn't go the distance and Waterson round 3. Those were all, it's a tough pill to swallow because the only way that I was losing that fight is a Pinheiro by decision. Yeah. One, I think Michelle Waterson did do enough to get the nod. I'm not screaming robbery though. The fight doesn't go the distance. I made that bet as a hedge because I thought that there was finishing upside for Pinheiro. And then I also thought that the Michelle Waterson wins in round 3. She ended up getting the back like I thought she would in round 3 with off the crappy judo throw. Yeah, it was called to a T. So I don't know. I'm not completely upset with missing those 3. I only ended up investing 2.25 units in that. We looked down at the next bet, Adesanya by TKO. Huge. It was my saver of the night. I was pretty deep in the hole, and then that put me positive. Let's see. I also had the over parlay in both the Burns Masvidal and Rosas Jr. Rodriguez. They both hit pretty easy. They both went to decision. There were some scary moments definitely in the Rosas fight, round 1. And then I also tried to play Meerschaert by submission. Just a bad bet. We were just on the wrong side, and Joe Pfeiffer has proved enough to me now that I think he's probably the real deal, man. I ended up the night positive 2.08 units with a 37% return on investment, and the streak continues, man. 6 UFC cards in a row for both of us. Happy to keep the ball rolling into this week. In our main event, we have Max Holloway taking on Arnold Allen. Allen making a surge to the top of the featherweight division as he approaches 30 years of age on a 10-fight win streak, 8 years in the UFC. And he's finally put together a few performances worthy of getting a crack at one of the greats like Max Holloway. We've seen over his career making steady improvements as he's climbed the rankings, and seeing him over the last few performances, I think we've seen a significant jump in his confidence. He's willing to let his hands fly now with the belief that he has the power to stop the fight. if he can find those shots. But sadly, we didn't get to see much of that in his last fight against Cater due to injury. But we did get to see a good first round where Allen was able to find some success with his straight left, with the lead leg kicks. It was the fight before that against Dan Hooker where we really got to see the type of power he carries in his hands. I mean, right from the jump, he noticed that he landed clean and then pounced on him, throwing 40 punch combinations, swinging those hooks with everything that he had. And I think he's lucky the fight got stopped when it was, because I was extremely worried about his cardio moving forward after that flurry. I think at this point in his career, he's definitely done the best with the opportunities presented to him so far. But Holloway is a huge step up from either of the fighters I just mentioned. And, you know, I've seen quite a few different takes on Twitter this week, and I'm not convinced that Holloway is on a decline like a lot of these people are suggesting. Losing to Volkanovski, especially after his last performance against Islam Makhachev, means absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things. Unless we believe that Allen has improved, you know, fight to fight to the point of someone like Volk or 155-pound Dustin Poirier, I'm not sure that Allen has what it takes. I mean, you know, you look at the fights in between those two killers where Max has shown us he's the best to ever do it. I liken him to Robert Whittaker of the featherweight division in the sense that, you know, the current champion has his number, sure, but he's proven to be far better than any other challenger the division has to offer. He just got through beating the interim belt holder by unanimous decision at the end of 2021. He 50-43'd Calvin Kattar on all three judges' scorecards. He 50-45'd Frankie Edgar and then stopped Brian Ortega in the championship rounds. Which brings me to my next point, man. Allen has never been 5 rounds in his career. Max Holloway does some of his best work over 25 minutes. I mean, this is a huge ask for Allen. He carries an insane amount of muscle, and those arms do get heavy. Just looking at his last fight that went to decision against Sadiq Youssef, he wins the first 2 against Sadiq and then loses the third on all 3 judges' scorecards. I just think that there's an opportunity there for Max to really start to take over down the stretch. And I've taken this stance on this fight. I will pay to see the day that Arnold Allen knocks out Max Holloway off, or at least off the featherweight mountain. You know, like I said, I've noticed improvements in all of Allen's 10 UFC fights since his debut in 2015, but I have never thought that's good enough to beat Max Holloway after any of his performances. I'm pretty heavy on Max Holloway. If you don't know, I'll talk about it more, but I like Max Holloway here, man.
I'm right behind you, man. It's a killer main event. You know, Max is my dude. Got his merch on. Been to see him fight live. And you know, normally if he's not fighting Volkanovski and I see something under a minus 200, I'd be 4 units deep on it too. And it's nothing that I see skill set wise from Arnold or even for Max, because you know when he's on, man, he's a pound for pound one of the best fighters on the planet. I think the volume is unmatched by anybody. Can go a hard 5 rounds unlike anybody I've seen. And I have notes about I thought Allen was, you know, vividly slowing down in the use of fight, and it's not a good look going into a fight with Max, a guy who has everything in combination, great footwork, and as durable as they come, the most strikes absorbed and never being knocked down. So you're right, I'll pay to see the day that Max Holloway is finished, you know. Decline is the wrong word if everybody's throwing that out this week, because I have seen nothing to show me that Max Holloway is on the decline. The reason for me that I'm not telling you 4 units deep, maybe Israel, like I said, told you earlier, maybe Adesanya relit a fire underneath his ass when the guy's 3 up on you and you go out and knock him out. I just question where the motivation will continue to be as long as Alex has the belt. How long do you continue to just want to get matched up with the prospects to knock them out time and time again? It's my only knock on Max Holloway is just, is he as serious as he once was at capturing gold? A lot more knocks on Allen. The inconsistency for the guy. He fights basically once a year. Mm-hmm. I've been seeing stuff online this week about the hand injuries and stuff, and that was something I was unaware of until then. But I do think it is noticeable that the guy is still pretty young, and each fight he is making improvements. I think there is a chance that maybe he could win round 1 at a decently high clip. And if he wins round 1, I'm worried that there maybe is another round where he might land the bigger shots of the fight, but, you know, not the volume of the fight, and we just go right back to the shitty judging in a place we haven't been to in I don't know how long to judge a fight based on power and volume. it just gets a little bit tricky for me. And there's a whole lot of tape out there for how to stay behind your jab and use the front leg kick to beat Max. And, the southpaw of Dustin Poirier, Max didn't really seem to see the left hand the same, and he's not really fought a lot of southpaws since then. There's some things that kind of got me off the Max side, but Max, hearing you talk about it makes me want to jump right back up on the train as well, because how much does, the one round with Calvin Kattar tell me? It tells me really nothing. I want to see that fight play out because Calvin's another guy with incredible gas tank, the volume, and slightly less boxing than Max Holloway, And so I wanted to see that fight play out over 5 rounds. Getting your first real finish at the UFC over Dan Hooker, a guy who took damage after damage at lightweight and then depletes himself after years there to try to get back to featherweight, that doesn't tell me anything either, man. So the more I keep looking into the fight, I do come out on the Max side. So I couldn't go the fight without having some type of action on him that I'll talk about later on here.
I have to throw this out as well. We're seeing Allen close as the pick'ems against Dan Hooker at minus 135 against Calvin Kattar. I mean, he was minus 140 against Jordan Rinaldi. I mean, like how good could he possibly be to Max Holloway not be deserving of something, something
minus 200 or more,
or when he closed at minus 750 against Yair Rodriguez. Like, what are we thinking that Arnold Allen has that Yair Rodriguez can't match in some way, shape, or form? I'm happy that we're at least both on the side, even if you're not going in on it like I am. I'm happy that we're both on this side because I do think, like you said, Holloway has all the tools to get this done.
Co-main at the end of the evening, staying at featherweight, we see Edson Barboza taking on Billy Quarantillo. Banger of a co-main event, man. There is no way this isn't a fun fight. And when Barboza was in best form, a lightweight a few years ago, I'm tracking 11 units on Bet MMA on this at plus 150 here, but it's just not the reality of it. He has lost 7 of his last 10 fights. He just turned 37 years old. There is a lot of war, a lot of fight miles on him. And you never really like to see guys seeking answers, searching for answers going down weight classes where he's 2-3 there. It's not the form that I necessarily want Edson in going to back him. It's going to be a damn good idea for Billy Q to wrestle in this fight. I don't know how much of a threat Billy Q really is wrestling. And I think Edson has potential to light the guy up on the feet. I really do. I think he's twice the striker technically. I think he's a whole lot faster than Billy Q. And I think the calf kick is just going to cause Billy a ton of issues like we've seen in his previous fights. And you're looking at Edson, who has one of the absolute best resumes on the roster, including, I know MMA math doesn't really add up a whole lot, but they're back-to-back fights, like, just 6 months in between. You have Edson finishing Burgos, and you got Burgos winning, a fight over Billy Q in primarily 6 rounds of just primary standing and striking. The fights weren't too different. Billy, he's as tough as they come, man. He's got a gas tank like crazy. He can put a ton of volume on there. He's almost like a poor man's Max Holloway, in my opinion. The striking defense to go included. I remember laying minus 160 on him against Alexander Hernandez last time out. Look, I knew Hernandez was going to gas. I knew he's making 145 for the first time. And Billy goes out there and still loses round 1 and gives me a better number at round 2, showing me, pre-fight probably wasn't the best way to play him. Mm-hmm. And I got to go back to my Bet MMA history where I laid juice on this guy to beat Gavin Tucker, man. And he goes out there, and Gavin Tucker puts on a striking clinic against Billy Q. It was a spot that really made me hesitant to ever go back to the well with Billy Q ever again. A lot of his success really relies upon his opponent slowing down in round 2 and 3. And I've just not seen a striker really put that type of pressure on Edson and slow him down. It's been grapplers, and it's been a lot heavier grapplers. So Edson is very tempting to me at plus money this week. Think even more tempting for yourself, though.
Yeah, it's one of these things where it has not seen much resistance, but I'm fairly certain I'll end up having 1.5, 2 units on Barboza here by the end of the week. I'm kind of reiterating what you said. Never been too impressed with Billy Q outside of his durability and scrambling ability. I think a lot of his game relies on the ability to capitalize on his opponent's mistakes rather than creating significant offense of his own. I think that he'll be at a significant striking disadvantage for as long as this is on the feet. Edson Barboza, proven to be one of the most dangerous strikers in the UFC. He's definitely had two big holes in his game. It's always been against grapplers or power punchers, neither of which Billy Q is. And, sure, Billy has good scrambles in BJJ, but I do struggle to... I do think he'll struggle to get the fight to the mat on his own terms. You talked about him not being confident in his wrestling. He's sporting a 24% takedown accuracy, which isn't what I would want to see if I were backing Billy. Because, outside of jumping his back when Edson is, botched a spinning attack or something, I think the likelihood of him having similar success to somebody like Bryce Mitchell in his last fight or Khabib are slim to none. Slim to none. So Edson might be 37 years old, but he just turned 37 this year. I think it's a pretty good stylistic matchup for him. And plus, you're getting a decent price tag on him after a few lackluster performances against some killers at 145. I mean, I sure as hell would not expect Billy Q to have a much better performance over Bryce Mitchell or Giga Chikadze, We're seeing a decent buy low spot on a much more proven fighter against someone who's managed to stay relevant and long enough to get an opportunity like this to make a name for themselves, And what's crazier is Billy isn't even young, man. He turns 35 years old this year, and he's coming off the best win of his career over a known gasser. I don't think he's going to get the same luxury of Barboza slowing down for him over the course of this 3-round fight. So yeah, man, I'm fired up right now. I'm all on Edson Barboza. For my fight of the night, I went with Ion Cutelaba taking on Tanner Boser in the light heavyweight division. I think this is going to be an absolute banger no matter who comes out on top here. Knowing what Ion has shown over his whole career, he's going to give everyone a very tough first round. And to be honest, in that first round, I think he has the tools to finish anybody. He has underrated grappling while he's still got the gas tank. I think that he could put anybody outside of Ankalaev on the mat. And then on top of that, he's a physical beast with real power in his hands. Tanner on the other side, he's kind of made a career of being able to mitigate the offense of his opponents, whether it be footwork or speed of striking or durability. He's just able to outwork them over 15 minutes. I think that this is a fight where if we see Boser win this, we can expect him to extend the fight past the first round, rely on his toughness before we start to see Cutelaba slowing down. And that's where Tanner Boser is going to shine, in my opinion. Boser has a 64% takedown defense with past performances that I've seen from him. I think we can expect him to hit the mat at least once in that first round. All three of his last opponents were able to accomplish that. And, I know you have to go all the way back to 2015 to find the last loss by finish on Boser's record. But I still think that Boser backers are going to be in for a hell of a sweat for the first 5 minutes. Either way that this fight plays out, I do think that we're going to be in a dogfight right off the bat, which is why I made this my fight of the night. I'm curious to get your opinion on it.
Easy fight to break down, in my opinion. You got Cutelaba, who would love to get the fight down to the mat, and Tanner Boser, who 100% wants to keep this fight up on the feet. I don't have the clearest outcome money line wise on who's going to have more success where. Cutelaba, it's just kind of known for the same thing. Can't miss, he just mismanages the gas tank, empties it out in a couple minutes. Horrible fight IQ. And he's been paying for it on the side of 3 losses in a row. I do think he's fighting for a roster spot here, but I think he gets Boser down early. I think there's a lot of unknowns as to what could happen after round 1, and that's why we kind of see this lined as a pick'em and stuff. Tanner Boser, he's been hinting at the move kind of to 205 for a long time, but after his last performance where a 265 guy just out-grapples you and you can't get back to your feet, I think that was the final straw for him. I told you earlier, Tanner Boser won his fights at heavyweight because of that speed advantage, because of that footwork advantage, it's being the lighter guy with the better gas tank. And when you drop down to a weight class, a lot of those things go out the window. So I'm curious to see the skill set on Tanner Boser and how he hangs with the light heavyweights. I'm not sold on his ability to keep the fight to the feet. Latifi is a long-time light heavyweight, was able to get him down to the ground and, neutralize him and stall him out. I feel like I have kind of a unique take on this fight. It's obviously it's only a 1 unit, exposure on it because backing this in the Cutelaba is very, very scary. But I think the fight goes over 1.5 rounds here. Tanner Boser is not a very doesn't have a high finishing upside in my opinion. I think cutting weight, he's going to have to even be a little bit more worried about his cardio and ability to go 15 minutes. And fingers crossed with Ion's back up against the wall, he doesn't go out here and blow his wad in the first 3 minutes. I actually think he's live to get the takedowns and hold Boser there and do damage for 2 of these rounds. And I've also got a quarter unit shot on the Cutelaba by decision. So a little worrisome. I go small exposure, but I'm taking the over 1.5, and I'm going to take Cutelaba decision.
Which, Cutelaba going to come out there. But to your point, the last time he went to decision, I was really happy that he was getting takedowns even in the 3rd round of that Devin Clark fight. He was able to land 3 out of 5 takedown attempts in the 3rd round. And for somebody who's shown some suspect gas issues, I do think that if he's prepared right for this fight, it's in there. It's, that is in there for him. I just hope that he uses his brain this fight.
For my fight of the night, I went with Brendan Royval taking on Matheus Nicolau, and you didn't pick the flyweights this week, so I had to shame this fight. Honestly, is not the co-main, and outside of the main event is the highest ranked matchup we have on the whole card, and it is buried down on the prelims for some reason. And Royval is about as exciting as they come, man. How often do you see a flyweight going the under 1.5 mark as much as he does? It's a ridiculous pace right out the gates. He's got a good gas tank to back it up. Phenomenal size at like 5'9" for the division. Opportunistic submissions. And really good forward pressure, but oftentimes he is a bit too wild, and I think it does get him in trouble at the highest level in the division. Saw this matchup made, saw the line drop in minus 155. We both got all over that, man. I like Nicolau in this matchup. 4-0 since coming back to the UFC with wins over Kopp, Elliott, Dvorak, and then most recently finished Matt Schnell. Makes him 6-fight total win streak. Nova Unao product, longtime coach by Andre Pederneiras, coach of Jose Aldo. I told you last week, being in his wife's corner, he's been in the United States a whole week earlier, acclimating to the time, cutting weight, making everything a whole lot easier, riding high off of a wife's win, The guy is very, very patient on the feet, doesn't overextend to get himself in trouble. He's a fantastic counter striker, and while normally that leads to some close decisions like it did with another striker in Manel Kopp, you got a dude in Brendan Royval who's just not like that, dude. He's going to be coming forward, letting Matheus let his hands go, and I think he's a much better boxer, accurate hands, tight box. Fantastic black belt if this does hit the mat. I think there's plenty of ways Matheus Nicolau can win this fight. So I've chased it down, officially jumped on the train with you with Matheus Nicolau. I got 1.55 units to win 1 unit on him here, and I think you see something pretty similar.
Yeah, I definitely do. You kind of touched on the point. It's how sound Matheus Nicolau is defensively is what's going to win him this fight. Brandon Royval, similar to like Billy Q, he kind of needs chaos to excel in his fighting style, and I just don't think that Nicolau's going to give him that opportunity. Throw on top of the fact that Royval's never won a UFC decision, and at flyweight, that's not what you want to see. I do think if this extends past the initial barrage that Royval's going to throw at Matheus Nicolau, and Nicolau can, keep the distance, keep the fight where he wants it, just pick him apart. I think this might look like an easy decision win for Matheus Nicolau, and maybe a spot that we could look at exposing prop-wise as well. For my fighter to watch, I picked Ed Herman. I mean, the guy's 42 years old, 26 fights deep in the UFC, and he's not even the one who's talking about retirement in this matchup. He was able to string together a solid 3-fight win streak in 2019, 2020 that made you think that he was still rightfully on the roster, Then he takes another year off, pulls out of a fight, and comes back to fight Alonzo Menifield and really didn't give a great account of himself right from the jump. He lost a 30-27 decision on all 3 judges' scorecards, and outside of showing, extreme toughness, it did seem like maybe his best days are officially behind him. He's now matched up with Zach Cummings, who some would argue is also past his prime, I feel like Ed Herman is kind of being thrown a bone here. I'm not sure that there's anyone left on the light heavyweight division, on the roster in the light heavyweight division, that wouldn't be a favorite if they were matched up against Herman. But this is definitely one of his more winnable fights that he could be scheduled for. I think, as weird as it may sound, we might see more aspects of Herman's game here, than we have seen in his past few fights. He's got someone in Cummings who doesn't have a lot of finishing upside or fight-ending power. And so Herman should be able to get off some offense of his own without having to worry about getting hit with like a Minifield overhand right, I do think that he's going to have to kind of come out of his shell, show a little bit more of his tools, and maybe prove to us that he does still deserve a spot on this roster, because it's a hard argument to make when you start dropping fights at 42 years old.
Yeah, man, great fighter to watch. I know I was reading about Zach Cummins this week, definitely retiring in front of all his family and stuff this weekend, and he's coming off like massive back surgery and all that kind of shit. So keep your eyes on that Herman, man. Fighter to watch. Take about 20 years off of it here. We're going to go with Daniel Zellhuber. Was one of the many people who, lost money trying to lay chalk on this guy in his debut. And he had a hell of a Contender Series showing, but our fault for laying juice on a debuting fighter like that. But I'll be honest with you, man. I think he flat out dropped the ball against Trey Ogden. Like, you have all the physical and skill advantages you could want in that fight, and there's not a lot of easier fights in the lightweight division, right, besides Trey Ogden. I mean, Zellhuber's so, no sense of urgency, didn't let his hands go, despite having, no firepower coming back in return. Part of me thinks that if it wasn't his UFC debut, he doesn't drop it. The other part of me says, no, it was in the Apex, just like his Dana White Contender Series showing is, and now he's in a live crowd. Maybe this is really his first UFC debut showing, Yeah. Again, here he is, though, with all the youth, the size, the physical tools you could want against Lando Venata, great striker, nice size and reach advantage, and taking the far less damage throughout his career. Yet it's Lando's line that's been hit from minus 150s, almost down to basically even money. And he's got the experience, the potential, to have a wrestling upside here. I really thought Daniel Zellhuber was a prospect. I don't know whether to chalk it up as I was wrong or if it was debut jitters. I do see online he was at Extreme Couture for the Contender Series performance, then left him. Now he's back. I think he's got a tougher debut opponent, in Lando Venata. So, man, for many reasons, Daniel Zellhuber, my fighter to watch this week.
Lando also training up in Colorado now. Nice. I mean, It's it'll be tough for him, and I just can't imagine anybody laying juice on Zellhuber here. He's got to prove it, right? He's got to prove it. I think an excellent fighter to watch for this week. For my underdog of the card, already got to talk about him a little bit in the co-main event. It is Edson Barboza taking on Billy Q. I think that Edson Barboza has huge upside on the feet. I don't think that Billy Quarantillo has, one, the wrestling to get him to the mat, or two, the control to keep him on the mat. Edson Barboza is going to be tearing up that leg of Billy Q, exactly how we saw Shane Burgos tear up the leg of Billy Q. And I think Billy's going to be at a disadvantage after the first round for the rest of the fight, which will only worsen his chances of getting the takedown. Edson Barboza, he's sitting at plus 155. I have made a bet on that, although I haven't locked it in, just because we're seeing zero resistance. The line across the board is going in favor of Billy Quarantillo. So I guess just sit back and wait for weigh-ins. But I do think that once these guys weigh in and everybody realizes that although Barboza's 37, he's still like one of the most in-shape fighters on the roster. He's big at 145. I do think that we're going to see some pushback on that line post weigh-ins.
I like it, man. I like it. I might be joining you. Underdog for me, going to go with Pedro Munoz. I got one unit locked in on him at plus 180. I think we're seeing market overcorrection as we always do on big-time knockouts, when Gutierrez TKO'd Frankie Edgar. And then how many times lately have we seen these veterans who have that competition edge come and give the vet lesson? Font and Gastelum both did it last week. Sakai a few weeks back. I think Pedro's still got enough to compete with Chris Gutierrez. I think this is much closer to a pick-em price tag. And if this fight is made pre-Gutierrez getting that TKO, I don't think you see minus 225 here. For Pedro, training out of American Top Team, still has a great team around him. I think he's got just as good of a calf kick as Chris, enough to maybe even neutralize it. I think he, although he doesn't use it, I think he is the better wrestler. He's got a good, nice guillotine, better submission upside. Man, outside of just speed and youth, I don't see a ton of advantages Chris really has in the skill set here, at least not enough to get me to the minus 225 that he was on. In 2020, I mean, this guy is drawing with a flyweight, Cody Durden, coming in on short notice. In 2021, he's going to split decision with Felipe Colares. And last year, I bet Dana Batchery. And we wanted to go back and rewatch that fight because I remember being a little biased, thinking Dana was winning that fight. No, Dana was absolutely winning that fight until Gutierrez finds a spinning back fist. And then you throw into the fact that it is his best opponent to date, and we've seen Chris Gutierrez go to 5 split decisions in his career, 4 more for Pedro. This fight, to me, seriously goes to decision 80 to 85% of the time, and I'm not going to be holding minus 225 in my hand when a split is being read. I think it's going to be 29-28. I think the value clearly to me here is on Pedro Munoz at plus 180.
For my prop of the week, we're digging for some props here, so we're kind of sharing a little bit. It'll be Holloway wins in round 4, 5 or decision. A couple of things about this one. I like it in the fact that I think that Holloway is, if it makes it to rounds 4 or 5 or decision, absolutely gonna pull away in this fight. You know, I love the fact that it's also plus money. My only take back from it is that I think Holloway could finish Arnold Allen in the 3rd round. I do think that there's a high likelihood that he puts more pressure than Sadiq Youssef did in Allen to really deplete his cardio. And I could definitely see Allen folding if his initial barrages aren't enough to put Max Holloway out. That being said, Arnold Allen, extreme toughness shown in all of his fights too. And Max Holloway not really known as a power puncher. So this fight getting extended, you're getting plus 125. Holloway wins in rounds 4, 5 or decision on FanDuel. I think that's an excellent prop for this card, and I'm glad that we're both on it here.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I was a little bit hesitant about it because he finished Jose Aldo both times in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
And so I was a little bit hesitant as well, plus money being the final straw that made me, pull the trigger on it as well. But I do think Arnold Allen, 30 years old, Aldo a little bit past his prime at that point, just couldn't hang in there. I think you got a tough young guy who's going to take the damage until the later rounds, maybe like a Ortega getting stopped on the stool or something by his dad in the corner or something. But
Live to fight another day,
exactly. I think Max Holloway teaches the guy a lesson and really does pull away in the later rounds. The prop I got locked in, I'm gonna do the Boser Cutelaba over 1.5. I'm actually a little bit more confident in that than I am the Cutelaba decision, and I actually have more stake on that one. So I think I'm gonna go over 1.5 there, and that's 7.5 minutes. I think Cutelaba's super live to win this first round with his takedowns, and then as it gets into round 2, it does get a little bit sketchy, but I'm okay with it being Tanner Boser, who doesn't just have the highest finishing upside, not the finishing upside of like a Walker, Spann, a Kennedy, and Nzechukwu. So yeah, over 1.5 in a Cutelaba fight. Didn't think I'd ever really play some juice on that. That's going to be the prop this week.
I'll keep it short and simple right here, man. For my best bet on the card, it is none other than Max Holloway, man. Getting him at minus 200 or better, I think that there's absolute value on this. Like I said earlier, I will pay money to see the day that Arnold Allen overtakes Max Holloway. We haven't seen a true decline in Holloway. He's just losing to the best guys out there. Never been dropped. He's absorbed the most damage. There's no argument that you can make that you're seeing him be less durable. And then any time that he's not fighting Volkanovski or Dustin Poirier at 155, he's slaughtering them. Right. So Max Holloway, money line, in pretty deep right now. He's my best bet.
Nice. I got 2 units on Dustin Jacoby at minus 159. Line's been all over the place all week, man. Honestly, he started at minus 200, slipped down to minus 150 in the exact opposite direction I thought it was going to go. Been to the well like yourself on a lot of Jacoby fights. I think this guy has improved drastically since his first stint in the UFC, now training out of Factory X Muay Thai. I really think this guy should be on a 10-fight win streak right now. I was biased having money on him against the Khalil fight, but I went back and watched that fight, and man, really outside of like the last minute and a half, 2 minutes of round 3, I didn't think Khalil won a lot of that fight, man. I think he's going to get the fight he wants here. Dustin's going to get the fight he wants in Mirzakhanov. I don't think he's too much of a wrestling threat. Don't think it's going to be too much of a factor. I think we're going to see this fight largely play out on the feet where Dustin excels like he always does. The Glory kickboxing stint, sharpened this guy's kickboxing like no other. I mean, it's night and day difference from the first and second time he's been in the UFC. He's going to be sporting a massive reach and height advantage of 5 and 6 inches here. He's got incredible volume. Justin Jacoby has the ability to put out in one round what Mirzakhanov does in all 3 rounds of his fights. He's the far better minute winner, while Mirzakhanov is just that big moment winner. And, despite these back-to-back round 3 stoppages, I think Jacoby's going to hold a significant edge in cardio and push a higher pace longer in this fight. You throw in the much harder competition that he's fought. Watching him back, I was extremely lucky to cash my bet on Mirzakhanov against Tefan and Chukwi. He literally, the volume was not there. Tefan was just piecing him up at range, something I think Jacoby is 100% live to do. And Mirzakhanov seems very finish reliant in this matchup against a guy in Jacoby who historically has been extremely durable throughout his career. So, again, I had parlayed Dustin Jacoby at minus 200 with other things, thinking that it was still a good bet. And so to see it move against my thought process is a little bit worrying, but my gut's been steering me the right way lately, man. So I'm going to go Justin Jacoby. I think he looks much closer to 70% here, win probability, 2 units at minus 159.
We start off the quick pick section in the women's bantamweight division, where we see Jocelyn Edwards taking on Lucy Pudilova. Oh, man, I'm so close to betting Cutelaba this week. I think I'll end up finding some degenerate way to put her decision prop on my card. I hate paying juice for low-level women's fight, and that's what you'd have to do to bet Cutelaba here. She's my pick, but I'm not playing it money line-wise.
Yeah, man, she looked great in her showing coming back to the UFC last time against Yinan Wu, so I get why the price tag is probably where it is. She's going to be my pick as well, but I won't have any action. Moving up to the men's bantamweight division, Gaston Bolaños and Aaron Phillips. Gastaños has a pretty nice highlight reel out there, but I didn't tape this fight, man. To be honest with you, it's a little bit low level. The line wasn't really intriguing on either guy. I'm going to take Gaston Bolaños to win via TKO, but take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, man, I think this is one of those fights where the UFC would prefer Bolaños to win just so they could show his highlight clip. I'd hate the price tag, especially considering he's 6-3, so I'll also lean Bolaños here. No actual money on that fight, though. Moving down to the women's strawweight division, Bruno Brazil taking on Denise Gomes. I see a lot of people loving Gomes here, although I struggle to find a true path to victory. I think I'm on Bruno Brazil here, not paying the juice for it.
Yeah, the clearest edge anybody has in this fight is Bruno striking,
right.
And so I fail to see the path to victory really for Gomes, but she is a tough SOB. I've been dating Carol Hosa for a long time, so I know she's getting the work, on a daily basis, but I'm going to be on the side of Bruno Brazil as well. Lando Venata, go Mox.
Go Mox.
Fighting Daniel Zellhuber at 55. That's a tough one for me, man, because I really did like what I saw out of Zellhuber, and then I see a performance that I don't know if it was a one-off or if he's just really, really not what we thought he was. Give me Lando. Represent UTC.
I was about to say, we really hang on that one semester he wrestled with us. But I'm on Lando Venata. I was telling you, I have a plus 145 ticket when it first opened, and I'd be much more willing to play him if that was still the line. It's definitely got away from us here, and hate to pay juice to see Zellhuber. It was a real disappointment last time out. I'm with you. I'm going to go Venata here as well. Not confident in it. Moving up, we go to the women's strawweight division. Pereira Rodriguez taking on Jillian Robertson. We both kind of talked about Robertson looking real nice, but it also kind of goes back to just how high level are these girls, and do we want to lay juice on the women's favorite?
You're right, man. But dropping down a weight class, she's going to have the size advantage. She has the grappling edge. She's got as many UFC fights as this girl has pro fights, so it's the bet that keeps staring me in the face all week. I don't know if I get there, but I do think I can say clearly that I think Jillian Robertson is my pick. Moving on up to 205, Ed Herman versus Zach Cummins. Jesus Christ. And Zach Cummins is the pick. No bet at all.
Our first disagreement, man. I was wondering when it was going to come. I'm going to take Ed Herman here. Like I said, I do feel like this is one of the most winnable fights in the division for him. And Zach Cummins, a bunch of unanswered questions. You hear the R word. Hey, yeah, back away. I'll take Ed Herman for the pick. Moving down to the men's flyweight division, Brandon Royval taking on Matheus Nicolau. We're both big on the Matheus Nicolau train. I do think that he has... one of the most well-rounded games in the division, and he's going to be a tough stylistic matchup for anybody just because of how difficult he is to expose. There's not many holes, So Matheus Nicolau, hopefully he doesn't screw us like Ankalaev, making it close. Hopefully he's the winner, and it shows.
Yeah, and a win here for Nicolau, and he's extremely close to fighting for a belt as well with Pantoja and Moreno just getting matched up yesterday for July. A win here puts him maybe next up in title contentions. Going on up, Bill Algeo taking on TJ Brown at the featherweight division. This is the only bet of the card that I have that I did not talk about. Seen the line movement in my favor as well. Got a ton of closing line value. I got Bill Algeo at minus 145. I think he's a clear pick, man.
Yeah, I'm going to go with you. I don't have much faith in TJ Brown's game. I think that he's pretty one-dimensional, and I think Bill Algeo will figure it out over the course of 15 minutes. I'm also with you. We move up a division to the men's lightweight where we see Clay Guida taking on Rafa Garcia. For what it's worth, I think this is kind of like a tough matchup for Rafa Garcia. I see Clay kind of match up with him well in a lot of the same aspects that he would normally excel in, and so I'm not gonna find the play on Guida, but I do think that he covers his price tag, as odd as that sounds. Rafa Garcia is gonna be the pick, but I think it's a close one.
And you broke it down perfect because Rafa's my pick. I don't think I'm gonna get to the side of Guida, but I don't know, man. Both these guys like to wrestle, and Clay Guida's a damn good wrestler with a damn good gas tank to back it up. My one concern was Guida's fight with Mark Madsen, two guys who primarily like to wrestle. It gets stuck on the feet. Mark Madsen's able to outstrike him. So if it does get stuck on the feet, Garcia may be able to outpoint him. That's why he's going to be the pick for me. Pedro Munoz, Chris Gutierrez at 135. That's my dog. I took this week Pedro Munoz plus 180.
Man, I'm making this pick. I'll go Chris Gutierrez. I think that they have a lot of the same strengths, and if Munoz still refuses to use his grappling, I think we could be in for Chris Gutierrez, just showing he's got a little bit more in the tank at the current age that both these guys are. So I'll pick Chris Gutierrez, but I think plus 180 on Munoz. I definitely see where the value is, because this could be, like you said, going to the judges. We're not really sure where this fight's taking place. So yeah, Gutierrez for me. Moving on to the second fight on the main card in the light heavyweight division, Ion Cutelaba versus Tanner Boser. Ooh, this is tough. I'm gonna ride with you. I'm going Ion Cutelaba here. Yeah. I think he gets it done in the first round.
It's hard for me to.
I don't even believe that. I don't even believe what I just said, man.
Decision, right?
Yeah, man. Okay, I'm gonna take Ion Cutelaba. I think he does enough in those first two rounds.
That's right. I know, man. As wild as it sounds, Cutelaba by decision is not far fetched. It's hard for me to really go to the well and back Cutelaba with money, but it's also hard for me to go away from a guy where I see a clear advantage in. So right. Cutelaba's going to be the pick as well. Jacoby versus Azamat Mirzakhanov up at 205. Dustin Jacoby's my best bet. Like I said, shocked to see the line move this other way, but Dustin Jacoby is my pick.
It is tough to fade the 12-0 fighter. Right. I think that's what's keeping me off of this, and it's a mental problem. It's even though you're right, I do see the edges in Jacoby. I'm going to go with Dustin Jacoby here as well. Yep. Then in the co-main event, Edson Barboza versus Billy Quarantillo. I'm on the Barboza side, man. I think that there's plenty of reasons why he is the side, especially at underdog odds. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the odds flip-flop. That's almost where I put the edge on Barboza. I think he's got a significant edge.
If you see that much of an edge,
you gotta hit it hard.
You gotta hit it. I probably am more inclined to play Jillian Robertson before I get to Edson Barboza, but he's going to be the pick for me. I'm taking underdog in the co-main event, Edson Barboza to get it done. And in the main event, I'm going with Max Holloway to beat Arnold Allen. I could see the championship round finishes, which is why we took that prop, but I am going to lean Max Holloway by decision.
Yeah, I think Max Holloway is the pick. We've made the best case that we can for him, so Max Holloway is the side for sure.
Thank you guys. Appreciate you hanging out with us. 14 total fights on the books. A killer main event there. Title contentions on the line there. And we'll see you guys next week for another big fight card.
Peace.